Wait until we kind of get a good group of attendees before we get started. So we'll wait about 30 seconds to a minute to get started. All right, that's looking good. Okay. So good evening. Welcome to this Zoom webinar forum with the candidates for Bremerton City Council, which is sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Kitsap. My name is Katie Pratt, and I will be the moderator for tonight's event. The League of Women Voters is proud to be a nonpartisan organization, neither supporting nor opposing candidates and political parties. The League of Women Voters of Kitsap has been active since 1962, and we envision a democracy where every person has the desire, the right, the knowledge, and the confidence to participate. Before we begin tonight's event, we would like to acknowledge that our homes and gathering places in present-day Kitsap County are within the ancestral territories of the Suquamish and Slalom peoples, who have lived in harmony with the lands and waterways along Washington's Central Salish Sea for thousands of years. Here, the Suquamish and the Slalom live and protect the land and waters of their ancestors for future generations, as promised by the Point Elliott Treaty of 1855 and by the Point No Point Treaty of 1855. Now on to tonight's forum. Questions have been submitted to the League by voters through our website. We've consolidated those plus others the public has contributed into the questions I'll ask of tonight's candidates. The questions will cover a range of topics and issues pertinent to the city of Bremerton. All 6 candidates for Bremerton City Council were invited to attend this forum, and we have 5 candidates participating this evening. Our candidates are, for District 2, Denise Fry; for District 4, Jane Rebolowski and Marwan Cameron; for District 6, Mike Simpson and Anna Mockler. Thank you to all of our candidates for offering your skills and talents in service to our city. You deserve our respect, and we ask that during this forum, you maintain civility with one another. During tonight's forum, I will begin with the questions. We will go in the order your name appears on the ballot, and each of you in a rotating order will have 60 seconds to respond. If you have answered a question and have time remaining, you may speak about a previous question or clarify a statement. At the end of the forum, each candidate will have 90 seconds to make a closing statement. Our timekeeper will maintain the electronic clock, which you will see on your screen, to keep you aware of your time for each answer. If you run out of time, you may finish your sentence. I will interrupt you and move on to the next candidate if your answer continues beyond just finishing your sentence. So please refrain from cross-talking and just address your answers to the community rather than to each other. So now we'll begin our questions. And as a reminder, each of you will have 60 seconds to respond. And we'll begin with Denise Fry. So our first question is, what inspired you to run for city council? Denise.
I never planned it, but when my city council member resigned, it took me just a few seconds, honestly, just a few seconds to realize that this was the next step here in Kitsap County for my skills and experience. I had been the CEO of the YWCA Kitsap County when I first moved up here 9 years ago. And there I really learned about the needs in our community, working with domestic violence. And then I moved on and was CEO of the Chamber of Commerce, and that gave me a small business head. And when this opportunity came up, I thought, what better place to use those 2 experiences. I love Kitsap. I'm a proud Bremertonian. Some say I might have a chip on my shoulder because of that, but I love my city. And I am looking forward to this with all of you, truly. Thanks to the League.
Thank you. Jane?
Thank you for having me. I decided to run because there wasn't a lot of public participation of people in the 4th district. And in the past, we had very active council members who would hold district meetings that I always attended so I could know what was going on in council, what was coming up. And then I started attending council, especially after I retired. So I've been to every council meeting, every study session for years. So I know what's going on. I know the roles of the council. I love Bremerton. I've lived here for 25 years, longer than any place else. I could have chosen to live someplace else, but Bremerton's my town. So that is my main reason for council. Thank you.
Thank you. Marwan.
Good evening, everyone, to the League of Women Voters and to all the candidates here today. For me, again, just like the other two candidates, this wasn't something that was planned for me, but a couple reasons. For one, as Jane was saying, um, if this is a democracy, it has to work for everyone. And not everyone is participating in our democracy or knows what's going on in our city government. And we know that down ballot elections are tremendously important. And so starting the podcast to get that information out is one of the things that I've done. With a lot of the things that I've done here in this community through transportation, teaching at Olympic College, working for the Navy in various forms. It's one thing to be in the trenches and do the work, but at some point you kind of feel like you're just kind of spinning your wheels and you want to see change. And the only way to get that change is to make the changes in the laws and the policies and the procedures that we have.
Thank you. Mike?
Good evening to the folks on from the League of Women Voters and all the folks in the audience, my fellow panelists. The reason why I got involved was my water bill. I mean, that was pretty simple and straightforward. That's how I won election the first time. And I was on the council for 2 years. And while I was there, the voice from our neighborhood was heard. And the voice from our neighborhood wasn't heard from any other district in the council. And it needs to be reiterated loudly and repeatedly. Why am I the best candidate for this? Well, I've got the experience. I know how to do the job, and I certainly represent a large portion of our population. And it's a voice that absolutely needs to be heard on our council. Thank you.
Thank you. Anna?
Hey, good evening. I'd like to thank you, Katie and Maureen, and all the League of Women Voters for organizing this. Really appreciate it. I got into this to be of use. District 6 has been historically underserved. The very first thing was watching the kids walk down 13th Street on their way to the school bus stops, jumping into the muddy verge as people came bombing down that hill. I want, and my constituents want, a city that takes care of its kids, that cares about the more vulnerable among us. Basically, to give the people what they want. People wanted their streets repaired. And I think if you look around District 6 this year, you'll see Snyder, Cambrian, Wyckoff, Rainier, 13th, 15th. These are streets that now people can push a stroller along or whatever, because the edge is even and it's safe. I got 1 second, so thank you.
Thank you. All right, next question is, what do you consider to be the most important issue facing Bremerton today? And what ideas do you have to address this issue? And we'll start with Jane.
Thank you. By far, the most important issue facing us is the housing affordability or lack thereof. We give huge incentives to developers of large multifamily buildings where they don't have to pay taxes for either 8 years or 12 years, depending on if they give a few of the apartments to affordable, and that's affordable based on the county incomes, not Bremerton. Bremerton, where 40% of households make $40,000 or less, they cannot afford any of these new apartments, especially if they have more than one child. Another thing that is very critical to me is to get a connected bike and pedestrian network. Bicycle riders have no safe way to get from the west side to downtown. They've put off projects for over 15 years. So,
Thank you, Jane. Marwan?
So I agree with the folks that I've spoken to in District 4 and throughout the city. Affordable housing and homelessness by far is the biggest issue here in Bremerton and throughout Kitsap County. Whether you are a adjunct professor at Olympic College who is on food assistance because you can't make ends meet, or your other working professional, we're not keeping up with the cost of inflation and these exploding costs in housing. And so something radically needs to be done. I do agree that giving these incentives to builders is a broken model. And so if we're not going to about face and do something radical, then we're just going to continue to have these issues continue. And we're starting to see our homelessness increase as a result of that.
Thank you. Mike?
Thank you. Homelessness is a very big problem for the city to tackle. It took them 5 months to, dithering and hand wringing and finger pointing to actually go through and work out an ordinance. That should never happen. But the problem isn't so much that the council is going to fix it, because they won't. The council can't fix that sort of thing. Housing affordability for the middle class is something that the government is never going to be able to grant, and it should never have the power to do that. The big problem is that we have no accountability in government. So the ordinance got passed by the city council, but the mayor isn't bothering to sign it to actually enforce the ordinance and make the ordinance work. And it's accountability of our elected officials. We live in a constitutional republic. Many confuse that with a democracy. Democracies are mob rule. We don't have that. We have a republic, and we're here tonight to find out who's going to be the best person. Thank you.
Thank you. Anna?
Thank you. I too would go with affordable housing, and I'm really proud to be a member of a council that chose finding city-owned surplus properties for affordable housing as one of its goals and priorities for 2023. As chair of the audit committee, the auditor has found many parcels that the city owns where we can either partner with some private entity or build it ourselves and be able to provide affordable housing to the people who live here. It's not just that 40% of Bremerton households make less than $40,000. It's also a lot of veterans of the Navy and veterans of the shipyard are physically and otherwise disabled because that kind of work uses your body really quickly. You get broken a little earlier. So stopping now.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Denise? Oh, Denise, you're muted. Oh. Denise?
There we go.
Perfect,
Y'all
thank
have
you.
talked about affordable housing and the need for housing, and I'm not going to reiterate that. I'm going to move right into transportation and huge transportation projects that are coming into Bremerton. And I want to make sure that those are built for the future of Bremerton and not the past. I want to make sure that we have a really livable city where people can walk anywhere, where people can ride a bike anywhere, where people can push a stroller anywhere, that they have access to everything in this great community of ours, no matter what their ability is. And I think we're on the right track. But we need to focus a lot more on that and make sure that, in the next several years, we have a multimodal path through Bremerton so that we're really connected with multimodal transportation. Big projects, big money, let's use it, wisely. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, our next is, do you support the newly approved ordinance on homeless encampments? Please explain why or why not. And we'll start with Marwan.
I do not. I think that it is incomplete. One, we've known that this has been an issue since before COVID. And my hope would be that City Council and the mayor would have provided a solution for the unhoused before passing the ordinance. So right now, there is no designated shelter or space that is available. When Salvation Army opens November 1, it will fill up, but it's not room for everyone. And as we know, the point in time count is woefully undercounted, and there are going to be many people that are still outside and have nowhere to go. So that is a huge concern. And so I don't know if it's also constitutionally legal to make such a ramification to say, hey, if there's not an open space, that folks are not able to camp outside. So I would like to see that be supported in immediately creating a shelter for the unhoused, regardless of their status.
Thank you. Mike?
Thanks. That's a great question. So yes, I support the ordinance. However, I have a caveat. The mayor's not enforcing it, so it's a useless piece of paper at this point. If it's not enforced, if it's not enforceable, then the whole effort was a waste of time. And when many members of the council push forward the narrative that we're going to give away pieces of property for people who are unhoused to come and live on, it's going to foster the idea that we're inviting more people here to become homeless. People don't choose homelessness, but they've been choosing Bremerton because we're giving away free stuff. And when we do things that enable the behavior that is unacceptable in our society, the conditions that they live in are atrocious. And we would not allow that to happen in a third world country, let alone our backyard. And it's unfathomable that we would have this sort of stuff going on in our own city. And we need to make it stop. Thanks.
Thank you. Anna?
Thanks. So the ordinance is in force. That's just one thing. One of the things that people didn't understand during the many very large public meetings that we had for quite a while was that city council can make legislation like this ordinance, but we cannot enforce it. Only the mayor can execute the decisions that council makes. An example is the $10,000 the council set aside for portable toilets last November, which money has still not been spent. Sorry. I think the ordinance, which in actuality, I'm just going to go over about 3 seconds. The ordinance is enforced unless you can't be kicked off the sidewalk or the street unless there's somewhere for you to go.
Thank you.
Okay.
Denise?
Yes, I happen to chair the Public Safety Committee right now for the council, and this has been an issue that has been discussed, as you know, for several months with a lot of community input and from all perspectives. And we listened a lot. People got sick of us listening, spending so much time listening, but we had to. And I think passing the ordinance was the right thing. I voted for it. I know full well that it can't be enforced until we have a shelter open. I do know that shelter is going to be full. And I do know from our study session last night, which is public record, the mayor made a report with a plan. So we're getting close. I want to trust the mayor that this is going to happen, but we did our job. And now we've got to make sure on whatever we can that he does his. Thanks.
Thank you. Jane?
I agree with the ordinance, except for the portion where it says that if people willingly do something where they are thrown out of the shelter, that basically they can be arrested. Because I think we have to pay attention to the severe mental illness that is affecting some of the people who are now living in our encampments. So other than that, yes, I agree. It cannot be enforced until after shelter's over, but we also have to at the same time put in a designated safe camping spot for the overflow, for people who can't go in there. People who, if you're incontinent, you're not allowed in the shelters. There's all kinds of people who aren't going to be able to go in there. So we have to have that authorized encampment that would be fenced in with portable toilets, water, and safety. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question is, how can the city of Bremerton address homelessness in a way that will alleviate the problem long term? And we'll start with Mike.
That's a great question. So how can the city alleviate homelessness and make it not continue? Well, first of all, you need to, the council can pass a resolution that says that they're going to enact every measure that will make it so that we do not enable homelessness in our community. And what the resolution does is it puts forward the word that we do not want to have homelessness in our city. And this is a pretty straightforward agenda. Now, you can hold our mayor accountable with this because as the members of the city council, you have the power of the purse and you can hold his check until the mayor enacts the legislation and makes it work and enforces what needs to happen. That's how we hold our elected officials accountable with the power of the purse. And what the resolution would do is it would tell the folks who are not in our community that we are not accepting anyone new here who is homeless. That's what we need. Thanks.
Thank you. Anna?
Thanks. Well, what I've been proposing for months now is a pallet village with an urban rest stop with toilet, laundry, showers, lodge with secure storage of personal possessions, a room for service providers, unarmed security trained in conflict resolution and demobilization and de-escalation, sorry. And what I suggested last night as a site for that is a fenced area for the security of the people in the encampment on one of the parking lots that the city owns downtown. This is something we could set up within a week. Every count of the population that is unhoused and living in encampments shows that these are people who came from Bremerton, who came from Kitsap. These are not aliens in any sense. They are our neighbors. They are in trouble.
Thank you. Denise?
Yeah, I just read a Seattle. I've been doing a deep dive on this, and my work with the YWCA, I worked in emergency housing, transitional housing, permanent supportive housing. So I get it. I understand that affordable housing, the way we talk about it, is really subsidized housing. So we need to continue that, certainly. We need to subsidize housing when we can, when there are dollars available, and we need to make it a budget item, not necessarily in the city. I'm more about collaborative spirit. There was a recent article in the Seattle Times about what's been going on over there, and there's no centralization. They can have a regional homeless authority, but if they're dealing with 6 different jurisdictions, it's a madhouse, and communication, log jams, and so I look to the county. I know the mayor's working with the county, but I also look to our counterpart, Katie Walters. Let's work together on this.
Thank you. Jane?
There's so many different things that we need to address the homelessness situation, and a lot of the folks who are visibly homeless have severe substance abuse disorder. We don't have a medical detox in Kitsap County. How does that happen? We have a brand new hospital that doesn't have beds for the mentally ill, and when we managed to get one person in there. All they want to do is bump them out onto the street. So we need an effective mental health system, number one. And then I do believe in subsidized housing. We're a rich nation. We are throwing away money in other places. Let's house our elders, our children, our families. We just can't go on like this anymore. Stop the tax incentives for luxury apartments, and let's take that money to actually construct subsidized housing.
Thank you. Marwan.
If we believe in American exceptionalism and we are the greatest nation, then we have to act like it, which means that we actually have to take care of our citizens. This is a nationwide issue. This is a crisis. This was a crisis before COVID. It was a crisis during COVID, and it remains a crisis. And it is continuing to get worse. My nonprofit, G2, individuals that have come together, like Rock the Block, have come together and said, hey, we're going to roll up our sleeves and do more than we already have been doing to really address the issue. Our system is broken, not only in the fact that there isn't a medical detox. As my nonprofit has a transportation company, we transport people out to Kelso and Bellingham and further, unfortunately, but the systems in place are broken. So we have someone that, as an example, that we had to cover their rent because they have to leave an Oxford home, get in line at 5 in the morning at KCR to get funding, and they only take 6. He was 13.
Thank you. All right, our next question is: recently voters rejected a public safety levy, which would have added new police and firefighter positions to the city. What ideas do you have to add resources for public safety? And we'll start with Anna.
Thank you. First, I'd like to say that I think that levy would have had more success if the police and fire departments had spelled out that they were looking to fill 17 positions, that that's what the money was for, not just general money. I like the trend that Bremerton Police Department is showing towards more empathetic policing, and I think supplementing the activities of the police with more navigators, with more caseworkers, with more people who would be on the ground all the time, walking, with the experience and training in how to diffuse a situation and to calm it down, rather than what the police's primary focus is, which is to stop crimes against people and property. Yeah, okay, I got 1 second, so I'm stopping.
Thank you. Denise?
Yeah, I was really disappointed in that levy. As the chair of the Public Safety Committee, we couldn't do anything as council members except as private citizens. But I certainly support our law enforcement and fire. I have worked with them, of course, closely in the domestic violence work that I did, and continue to have great relationships with them, and I respect them very much. It's become a much more professional role than it used to be. Officers are looking for great opportunities with training, and smaller departments are finding that more and more difficult. I think one thing that is brewing, once again, that we need to take a look at is whether we should consolidate our fire services with the central Kitsap. I'm one that likes the pros of mergers, but I also know there's cons. I think it needs to be brought to the table.
Thank you. Jane?
Yes, I recently attended a 5-week seminar that the police department held on, I believe they called it Citizens Police Academy. But we got a very good overview of how understaffed they are. Our police department is one of only 25% in the state that's accredited. When I moved here in '99, it was more cowboys and Indians, free for all with the police. We have become a very professional police department, and I'm very happy to see the changes. Our fire department, I think we should consider consolidation with Central Kitsap after we really are able to look at the plans to see how everything would actually work out and cost benefits to the citizens of Bremerton.
Thank you. Marwan?
So for me, I believe that everything is goes together, symbiotic. In that, uh, we need our fire department, we need our police. Unfortunately, we also need revenue, and in order to generate revenue, we need tax money. In order to need tax money, we need taxpayers. In order to have taxpayers, we need people that can actually afford to live in Kitsap County. And so all of these things go together. And as people begin to struggle more and more, the resources become more restrained. And so I think we need a multi-pronged approach where we work with Olympic College and other collegiate institutions to make sure that we replace our aging healthcare professionals. We think about the future of technology with AI and what our workforce is going to look like here on the peninsula. And by doing that, we will bring in more revenue, we'll bring in more tourism, and we will be able to increase the fire and police as so necessary.
Thank you. Mike?
Hey, that's a great question. So first, the public levy failed because the voters looked at it and said that they didn't want to spend money in perpetuity and not get a result. There's no rubric. So if it was poorly worded and poorly thought out, and I'm unhappy that it failed. However, I didn't like the idea that it just went on forever and didn't provide us with a fixed number of firefighters or a fixed number of cops. And as a retired cop, I can tell you that there's a lot that we can do to help support that, and we don't do. Now, the city, the state, and the federal government have generated record amounts of revenue. So one of the things that we can do on the city council is we can zero line the budget. And what that means is that everything starts from zero, and then you justify every single dime that's spent of the people's money. Thanks.
Thank you. Our next question is dovetails well with the previous one, and that's proponents of the public safety levy have stated they intend to place the measure on the ballot again. So do you support this effort? And if so, what ideas do you have to ensure its passage? And if you don't support the measure, please explain why. And we'll start with Denise.
Well, I hope it goes up again. I tried to give input about this. It just wasn't our role. I wanted infographics. I wanted pictures that explained a story of why we needed this. I don't think the case was made adequately. As far as other income, I think that Bremerton supports its public safety, and I think that time will tell. But I think that plans are in the works. We can run another levy. If that fails, we're going to be talking about consolidation. We simply can't keep we don't have the money to provide these services any other way, and the community depends on these services. It's sometimes a life and death situation. So, yeah.
Thank you. Jane?
I would support a future levy. Number one, I hate these August levies. I feel that a levy should be only done in a general election or an election that you have numerous things on the ballot. My ballot only had the levy. And I did vote for it, but I do think it was poorly presented. I think showing, like right now on duty, we're only have 44 active police officers. That's crazy for a city our size. And our firefighters, they need additional training, but for all the training that everybody's doing, there's not enough people to make sure the stations are staffed correctly, or that you have 3 people going out in a vehicle. They only have 2. So that means if they go to an emergency situation, a house is on fire, they can't go in until a 3rd person drives up. So I definitely support it.
Marwan, you're next.
Absolutely support the levy. I think this is an issue of outreach and education and information, covering city council meetings and broadcasting it out, along with BCAT. I think as great as BCAT is, that's becoming an antiquated way, if that's kind of the single point of blasting out the information. And in regards to city council, when the levy was brought, to me, it wasn't brought with enough lead time from the time that it was brought to city council to the time that it was actually on the ballot. And so outreach, information, we have to do more and more so that more people in our city can participate in democracy. And I think we really dropped the ball there. And if we look at that, not only getting that information out, having conversations with the community, but also showing how it benefits them, where the deficits are, I think that will have a change in how people vote for the levy.
Thank you. Mike?
It's a great question. Okay, so the levy was poorly written, and it just represents another top-down instead of bottom-up approach. And that was unfortunate in how it was set up. And as other members of the panel have mentioned, regionalizing our fire service is probably the better option in all of this, because we can find money in the budget without having to ask the voters to support additional taxes and additional revenue for the city. We can find the money in the budget to hire more cops, and we can also sustain our fire service and actually augment the service in the city by going to a regionalized system. The regionalized system is something that I proposed while we were on the council, and there have been studies that have been done about this that show a huge cost savings in perpetuity for the city. And it's something that we absolutely should explore. Thanks.
Thank you. Anna?
First, yes, I would completely support the levy. I would hope that there would be more time for outreach beforehand. The thing is that if you are understaffed, it's difficult to find extra staff to go out and do the outreach. Couple of things that are different now than they used to be. One is that we no longer have Harrison. So the EMTs who make up such a large part of the fire department are, as you know, making longer trips and often staying at Harrison when real emergencies occur. That means you need more staff. Fentanyl and other really difficult drugs have come in, which means the police are spending more time on more crime. I support the levy. I support the merger with Central Kitsap.
Thank you. Our next question is, what do you think is the most important strategy Bremerton can pursue to keep the city affordable to live in? And we'll start with Jane.
Well, number one, I don't think we should be giving huge tax incentives for luxury housing, because nobody from here can afford that. I think that encouraging smaller developments with smaller houses, and I know lots of my friends are looking for 2-bedroom, 1-bath houses. So somehow working with the builders to think about doing smaller houses. Also, the real estate agency is looking at possible tweaks to the Growth Management Act that might make very big savings for building. And then we have to have decent transit, because if we're going to force people to build 6-story buildings in our downtown core, then they have to build underground parking, which makes it very expensive. If we had real
Thank
transit,
you. Marlon?
As I said before, this is a symbiotic issue. We need housing. We need that housing to be affordable. We need our residents to have a livable wage. In order to do that, we need to work with our education institution and create our carpenters, our plumbers, our framers, and we need to build. Charity starts at home. We have numerous people who are not making a livable wage in this city and in this county. And so, if we do that, and we start building ourselves and we can set the prices. We don't have to outsource it and have developers come in and give them 20% affordable housing. They build 5 units and one is quote unquote affordable. They build 20 units and 4 are affordable. Then we can quickly change this. But whatever we do, it needs to be sustainable and it needs to have its own resiliency. And so building with from within is the way to go.
Thank you. Mike?
That's a great question, and there are a lot of pieces to it. But one of the things is that you have to understand is that about 30% of the cost of constructing a new home for a single family is eaten up by regulation. And this is why I voted against increasing our building code when I was on the city council. And it all snowballs into everything. And I think Marwan touched on a lot of this stuff. It's the middle class that hold our city together. And if we've driven the prices up by artificially decreasing the amount of properties that are available, we need to figure out a way to get out of the Growth Management Act because it forces us to shove more people into the downtown corridors of our city, and that only serves to drive the prices up. We have a diverse city in socioeconomic standards. We have large pieces of property in District 7 and small pieces of property over Manette. And we have to have a program that works for all of these. And we can target it in different ways. And this is more than something that takes a minute. Thanks.
Thank you. Anna?
Could you repeat the question, please?
Yes, absolutely. What do you think is the most important strategy Bremerton can pursue to keep the city affordable to live in?
Housing is the largest cost. I think that this council's plan to use city-owned surplus property to build housing that's not simply affordable now, but that will remain affordable is central to making this city more livable. Then how are you going to get to and from this housing? The Kitsap Transit runs on a 1-hour schedule for the most part, outside of the rush hours. Kitsap Transit doesn't serve people trying to get from one place in Bremerton to another. That's something that we need to work on. These are the two largest budget items on most people's household expenditure. It is getting places and living somewhere. We can actually fix this.
Thank you. Denise?
Yeah, I want to clarify again, when I talk about affordable housing, generally, I'm really talking about subsidized housing. And those vouchers and programs go through the Bremerton Housing Authority. Here in Bremerton, excellent organization. It hasn't used all of its Section 8 vouchers. So, there's potential there. And I know the city's already working closely with BHA, Kitsap Community Resources. But I also think, that we do need to build some density, especially along the corridor. Density is what helps keep things affordable. The denser the housing is, the more economical it's going to be to buy. And so I'm all for it. It's my district. I'm saying let's redevelopment what used to be known, or is it currently known as the East Side Village development, and I want to call it the Harrison project in honor of the old Harrison Hospital.
All right, our next question. Low morale is a term used to describe city employees in both the municipal court system and police and fire departments. If elected to city council, what can you do to help address this issue and retain experienced employees? And Marwan, you're first.
With everything in America, we are quite divisive right now on so many different factors. And one of those reasons is we don't talk to each other. I think the first thing that we need to do is open up lanes of dialogue so that people can have conversations and get to know each other. I think that's paramount. I think people aren't heard, and people are so impassioned in getting their point out that sometimes they're not able to hear the other side, right? And we need to have conversations that are intellectually honest. Doesn't mean that folks have to agree, but they have to respect the other side. And if we can lay some ground rules and build some scaffolding, I believe over time, those things can improve. And then also to have an air of transparency and share that information, maybe have it in some public spaces so we can uncover what's under all the rocks.
Thank you. Mike?
So that's a great question. Now you've got three different categories that happens in. The city council is not in charge of the court system. That's up to Judge Flood, and she is the shiny face of that entire entity, and she controls the what happens with their employees. However, the city council does control funding, and it's been adequately funded, and it's up to the judge to make that fixed. To fix the morale that's going on there. They've seen a mass exodus in their employees, and I won't belabor the point. With our cops, it's a whole separate ball game, and that's not necessarily something the city council can fix. I do support our cops, and love to do more for them, but there's only so much we can. With our fire service, I think they'd be better. We would be better served by regionalizing our fire system. And our employees can work for Central Kitsap and whichever district that they choose to. I think that'd be a great option.
Thank you. Anna?
I see low morale everywhere. It's difficult to particularize it. I see glumness in coffee shops, glumness in theaters. People are quite exhausted at this point and feel powerless. I can't speak to how Chiefs Wolf and McGanny are running their departments. That's not my lane whatsoever. But I can speak to the feeling of powerlessness amongst the people who do not work for the city of Bremerton, which is let us increase the opportunities for the people we represent to speak directly to power, to find ways for their voices to be heard and acted upon, not simply checking a box that public comment has been received, but to know how that public comment has been received and acted upon. Thank you.
Thank you. Denise?
Yeah, I think this is happening around the country, probably around the world to some extent. It's hard to tease out. Much of it is related to post-pandemic impacts. It's really tough for our directors to find qualified candidates for positions. I know that. And I know that that's something that is going on around municipalities all around the country. So that's tough. And I want to appreciate that. Culture is a different thing, if the part of it that might be cultural, when I used to go into nonprofits and do turnarounds, the operational turnarounds were quite easy. Even the financial turnarounds were pretty easy. But the cultural turnarounds were a lot more challenging. There's a culture on the council, there's a culture in the administration. There's a culture. There's many cultures everywhere. And I think we need to take a good, healthy look at that.
Thank you. Jane?
Well, Mike is right that the city council doesn't have any say over how Judge Flood handles her employees and their morale. And I have been at council meetings numerous times where they appear to be funding the courts sufficiently. Police and fire, I agree that I think most of the firefighters would be happier if they consolidated with a larger agency. It would give them more training opportunities, places for them to move up or move sideways and try different things. The police department, we have such a national dialogue going on. Defund the police, give them more money. What are we going to do? People have been even cruel to some of the cops, but we need the cops to speak out when they see bad things happening in other places so that everybody
Thank you.
understands.
Our next question. Bremerton is currently in the process of updating its comprehensive plan. Please share with us what you know about the process and how you would engage with citizens in your district to ensure their vision for the future is incorporated into the plan. And we'll start with Mike.
Okay, so the comprehensive plan is important. It's a long-range goal that the city has for what it does with everything. The problem isn't public outreach, it's public interest. Most folks look at this and they their eyes gloss over and they just don't care. That's the bad part about it. Our government only works if we are engaged in it. Representative government doesn't work when people just go about their business and are blissfully ignorant of what happens. And this is what we have now. We have a lot of folks that are in the populace that are pretty apathetic about it. Most folks don't even know who our city council members are, or could identify the mayor. I mean, he's a nice guy, but most folks, unless you told them what his name was, they wouldn't know who he is. And that's the reality of it, let alone what happens in a comprehensive plan and what it addresses in general, even though it affects us on a daily basis. Thanks.
Thank you. Anna.
The comp plan is an interesting document. It's consists of visions and goals and that are drafted by the planning department, then they're run by the planning commission with members appointed by the mayor. And then at the end of this 2+ year process, it is presented to city council. Before that, members of the public are able to go to Bremerton2044.com. And in the past few weeks, it's been possible for them to comment on the elements of the plan. Do I think that this would be a more effective process were the document written in plain language? Yes, I do. But I am glad that at least it is there, it is available, and we are frequently getting emails from people that say, what should I do in order to preserve trees? And they are told that they should go to Bremerton2044.com and comment.
Thank you. Denise?
Bureaucracies really need a lot of plans, and we invest in them. And I believe in this one. I think this is probably the most important document, maybe besides the charter, that helps us operate with a vision. That being said, we don't get a lot of time. I've been calling it instead of hurry up and wait, it's the wait. Now hurry up and approve it. That's what it feels like to me. And I am a huge fan of community engagement. We now have meetings in person and online. I think all community engagement, all meeting should be both virtual and in person. Let's get the community involved with enough time to impact our decision making.
Thank you. Jane.
Well, that's another reason why I want to start holding monthly district meetings, is to have people come in, perhaps somebody from the transportation department, from Public Works, to explain what they're looking at doing in the transportation element, so that people can comment, know how to comment. People want more information, they just don't have the time to go to every meeting. So by making every meeting a hybrid meeting, I think that's very important. And a lot of people really do care about it. We just don't always feel like our voices are respected, because if you look at the last comp plan, over 200 people came in and said we needed more bike and pedestrian facilities, and staff wrote it up that we didn't really hear from people outside of the community, so they didn't feel it was as important. So I think the more people that participate, the better.
Thank you. Marwan.
So again, as earlier, I believe this is an outreach issue. There's a lot of apathy in District 4 and throughout the city in regards to, does city government actually work for me? Does it listen? We have watched record numbers of folks come in to city council for the housing ordinance, and many feel like they are not heard. Many feel like things are just being rubber stamped. If they write an email, last night was city council. It's going to take 10 days for city council to get that information and maybe respond to it. As Denise said, wait, hurry up and go, right? And so this isn't an effective way to run government. And so we do need to do outreach. KCR did a community needs assessment where they collaborated with the Kitsap Regional Library, Kitsap Public Health, and many others to ensure a wider net of involvement and participation.
Thank you. Our next question. Please rank the importance of a relationship with the Bremerton School Superintendent and Board, with 5 being the most important and 1 being of little importance, and please explain why. We'll start with Anna.
James Crawford is a wonderful, wonderful supervisor. The Bremerton School District is filled with committed teachers, school board members at every level. That said, the Bremerton School Board and the others run the school district any more than we can't step into Kitsap Public Health District and tell them how to run their shop. We can't tell the school board what to do. Having a good relationship with every possible member of the Bremerton School District is great. The only thing that I know in all the time that I've been following council, that council has been able to do was to get funding for laptops and hotspots at the beginning of the pandemic for every Bremerton school child who needed one.
Thank you. Denise?
Boy, do I like Dr. Crawford. What a gift he is to our community. Right now, he's ranking right up there for me, because there's a multimodal path that I want for my district right over here with maybe a new little park. And he and his school board just signed off on that. So just got word on that recently. And I think collaboration with our schools is important because it's our future. Those are the children who are our future. And when we build workforces, when we build the professionals that we need, when we develop them here in Kitsap, many of them stay here in Kitsap. Let's make sure that we have that great investment. And I would love to see, it's on our goals and objectives for this year, I'd love to see a youth advisory council on the Bremerton Chamber or on the Bremerton Council, City Council. So let's make that happen.
Thank you. Jane.
Well, I met Dr. Crawford. I think he's excellent too. We're very lucky to have him. And our school board directors also. I would love to see the children of our community more involved with our local government. I have a 19-year-old grandson who comes up with the most refreshing ideas for me all the time. I think it'd be great to have a student sit with council, perhaps be a non-voting member, but at least be there every week, following along, giving us input on what a 18-year-old's point of view is versus just listening to 66-year-old me.
Thank you. Marwan.
A few concerns for me. Last year, the girls volleyball team had a racial incident out in Mason County. And I believe that not enough was done to support those girls as they were far away from home and had this horrifying experience. And they didn't really get a favorable or fair analysis in the Kitsap Sun. So I think that was of concern. It also seemed to just kind of drop out after some time had passed. So NAACP got involved, and there were some conversations, but we don't know really what's happening on the other side of that. So that is a concern for me. Another one is many of these folks our youth are not going to leave. They are going to live here, and so what are they going to inherit? So I would like to see them more connected in city government, as this is their town.
Thank you. Mike.
That's a great question. Relationships are absolutely important. That's how we function as a society. It's how we function as a social order. It's how we function as a family. And establishing and maintaining those relationships are how we receive the needs, or how we voice our needs and receive the things that we need. Now, do I think that the relationship that we have with another elected body is important? Yeah. Should we be providing the laptops that were provided by the mayor and then given to forced on the city council? No, we never should have. It was an incredible waste and misuse of the city's money when there was a funding stream that was already set up through a taxable entity called the school board, who had that in their budget, and they used the money to use it in a fungible way. Now, that's not accountability in government, and that's what the city council is supposed to be. It's supposed to be accountable to us. Thanks.
Thank you. Our next question is also related to schools. There is growing concern about the condition of school facilities within the city, and several have been identified as needing repairs or upgrades. So first of all, do you have a public school within your district? And while the Bremerton School District is funded as a special service district and is not under the jurisdiction of the city, as a city council member, what support would you provide to the school board and school administration to address this issue? We'll start with Denise.
Yeah, View Ridge Elementary is just a few blocks away from my house, and it's in District 2. It's our local arts academy, and I'm down there often because the library is nearby. Yeah, facilities, maintenance, maintenance and capital investments. Investing in maintenance is so important, and it's so easy to put off. And then capital investments we can get money for. We have to make sure that we're planning the facility in a way that's going to meet the needs not only of our current students, but of our future students. And what does that look like? Education has completely changed, I think, the way we deliver it over the last several years. And I know that our local school district is going to be committed to making sure that facilities meet the needs not only of our current kids, but the kids in the future.
Thank you. Jane.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question? My battery.
Yeah, and it's a long one too. So There's growing concern about the condition of school facilities in the city, and several have been identified as needing repairs or upgrades. So first, do you have a public school within your district? And recognizing that the Bremerton School District is funded as a special service district and is not under the jurisdiction of the city, as a city council member, what support would you provide to the school board and school administration to address this issue?
Well, I live right behind the high school, and luckily the high school's in fairly good condition as a newer building. But I'm also close to Naval Elementary, and that is not in great condition. I'm not sure how we could commingle monies between the city and the school district. I think support, maybe with some of our staff time for them, researching grant opportunities for them, perhaps giving them a little bit of engineering advice, but financially, they're two separate, organizations.
Thank you. Marwan.
So as a city council member, we have a tremendous amount of power and influence. And so what I would recommend is full-throated advocacy. I'm 2 blocks from Bremerton High School. And Bremerton High has done some really wonderful things, having Angela Davis come out and make herself available to the people here and to the youth and to the kids. Resource officers are so needed. We still have some issues with the school to prison pipeline. As we just said in the last question, the youth are the future of Kitsap County and Bremerton, and many are going to stay here. And so we want to make sure that they're as supported as possible and that they have every advantage available to them as they age into adults and start families of their own. And hopefully they can actually live here in Bremerton and thrive. So whatever we can do to advocate for the school district, that's what I believe should happen.
Mike.
Thanks. That's a great question. So having been born and raised here and being a product of the public schools, I know they're vitally important to our community. Now, part of the question was that should we provide funding for them? Well, there's a separate funding source, much like Jane talked about, and we should support them with full-throated advocacy. This is true, but commingling finances, this is a dangerous proposition. The schools have a separate funding source for a reason, and our state spent somewhere in the neighborhood of $10.2 billion each biennium just funding our schools. And schools are a vital function. It's one of the core duties of our state government, and it's funded locally through our property taxes. Property taxes drive up the cost, and every year we have seen the cost of property appreciate year over year, and their funding source is at record levels. And we should have rubrics attached to what we get out of it. Thanks.
Thank you. Anna?
Would you repeat the question, please?
Yes. There's growing concern about the condition of school facilities within the city, and several have been identified as needing repairs or upgrades. So one, do you have a public school within your district? And while the Bremerton School District is funded as a special service district and is not under the jurisdiction of the city, as a city council member, what support would you provide to the school board and school administration to address this issue?
Yeah, I have Crown Hills Elementary in my district. West Hills STEM is actually located on Kitsap County, but a lot of kids in my district go to West Hills STEM. Man, I would really like to fly over both of these schools and all of the schools in Bremerton with a plane filled with gold. However, that is impractical. I have listened to school board members talk about the condition of their schools and complain about not just crumbling infrastructure, but they're just too small. As Denise said earlier, one of the things we can work on is safe routes to school. That's a role that council can play. I would be more than happy to sit down with any member of the school board any member of the administration. And if there is something that we can do without commingling funds, I would be on that. I would be really happy to do it because I think education really is the silver bullet. It's,
Thank you.
okay, thank you.
Next question. How would you like to see Bremerton address traffic calming, especially on residential streets? And we'll start with Jane.
That's great because I just design traffic calming for residential streets when I worked at the city of Seattle, Department of Transportation. And this is what makes a city livable. We can do very low cost treatments like small traffic circles. I used to be able to build them in Seattle for less than $15,000. We can put in speed cushions, which do not delay emergency services instead of speed bumps. We could do all sorts of practical, semi-permanent projects to test out, like just using paint to delineate a curb bulb. And plus the neighbors in that community, they could design it and paint it and get together as a community to do it. But we need to push our public works department into this century because they really are not open to doing too many innovative things at this time.
Thank you. Marwan.
One of the things that I'm not a fan of is in our main arterials are camera lights, especially in front of the college, that impact our low income individuals. We don't see this equitably throughout the city or throughout the county. Some of the things that Jane spoke about, I would definitely be in favor of. She seems to be more of an expert in that. Um, but a lot of folks are negatively impacted by these camera lights, and I see that as a huge issue. Speeding is also an issue. We have a lot of children all over the place. I've got a resident on my street that had to put up a sign that said "slow down," uh, and so we do need to do some things there. And so I would be interested in being more educated on what those options are, but they would need to be low cost and not just blow up the budget.
Thank you. Mike.
Yeah, so traffic calming is one way that you can address the situation with throughput through the city. And because our city has different pockets of neighborhoods, we need to not have a one size fits all policy. And that's what we have right now. One size fits all doesn't work for every neighborhood. It doesn't work for for the denser neighborhoods as opposed to the more rural neighborhoods. And and I have to agree with Marwan. I hate red light cameras. They are bad. However, while I was on the council, I made sure to divert money from the revenue that's generated from the red light cameras into our roads and streets, so we can actually pave more sidewalks and make stuff safer for folks. And it does kind of calm down traffic in the residential areas. And this is part of the important part about it. Now, would it be great if we could do all these things that Jane's talking about? That would be wonderful. However, it's impractical at this point, and we need to be able to balance services with infrastructure. Thanks.
Thank you. Anna.
Okay. This is something I've been saying for years and writing for years, is that when you have slow streets, you start building strong communities. Traffic calming can be speed cushions, it can be sidewalks, it can be bulb outs. There are a number of ways to calm traffic. Painting on the streets, painting crosswalks, indicating in many different ways that we want you to slow down would be very significant. Paint and planters is a common phrase for low income, low expenditure traffic calming measures. And it's what the vast majority of my constituents really want. They want people not to speed. They want to be able to walk with their children. with their dogs, with their loved ones. They want to go for a stroll after dinner. We need this.
Thank you.
Ah.
Denise.
I love it when people get so passionate. Never happens to me. Traffic calming was something I'd never even heard about. And yet, you know, I have a district that has Elmira, which is like an airport runway. And people come onto that and they go 60 miles an hour. We've got, you know, you can tell how fast you're going because we've got those things out. The city's working on this, I know. And in my district, it's made a lot easier when we have programs and funding like the Safe Routes to School grant, because that is going to help us on Elmira and especially on Sylvan, where we have kids walking to school. People are zooming down Sylvan to get to Wheaton Way. We've got a square, we've got a library there. The city is on it in this way. We've got to do more of it. We've got to bring calmness to our streets. Thanks.
Thank you. And just looking at the time, I think this next question is going to be our last one for this evening. Downtown Bremerton and other areas have come a long way in recent years. What ideas do you have to encourage continued vibrancy of Bremerton's neighborhoods? And we'll start with Marwan.
Here's where I'll talk about transportation. For my nonprofit, G2, I have a transportation company and we provide transportation throughout the county. We've been doing so for 5 years. There is not enough frequency of public transportation and there's not enough reach for public transportation. And so we're missing out on a lot of folks to be able to participate in all the trappings and offerings that downtown has because people can't get there. We also have an issue with folks who can't work. They can't get home after their shift ends. When the restaurant closes, there's no bus. And so that also is an issue. So here is where transportation is a huge issue. Not to mention our Seattle to Bremerton ferry run. And so those things need to be addressed. And I think those are the two biggest things that we could do to increase that support downtown.
Thank you. Mike?
I think that's a great question. And one of the core functions of government is public safety. And we see in the news recently that Seattle and Tacoma rank almost dead last in public safety. And the crime rates are going up there. The crime in Bremerton has gone up too. And public safety is the duty of local government. Part of the reason why vibrancy is hampered is because we do have crime that goes on a regular basis in our city, and we don't do the things that we need to do to enforce and follow the laws. Now, part of it is personal accountability, but this is where government comes in. If government utilizes some of its enforcement mechanisms to help out with that personal accountability, our population will follow suit. And we can do different outreach in the community and outside the community to bring more vibrancy in here, but if it's not a safe place to live, people will move and leave.
Thank you. Anna?
So this is a two-part question. You're asking about downtown and how can we foster vibrancy in neighborhoods. So I'm going to talk about Charleston District because that's close to me. And I have watched that district transform from kind of like what you'd expect from a movie about a Navy base in the Eisenhower era to what we currently have where art is popping up all over, coffee shops are popping all over, organizations are working on, just volunteers are doing weekly cleanups, flowers are hanging from baskets. It's a pretty wonderful story of urban rejuvenation. And one of the big drivers for that is the fact that Bremerton's planning department requires every single business on that street to have access for the public. So there can't be catering places. Everything has to be open.
Thank you.
Right, enough time.
Denise?
You know, I was CEO of the Chamber of Commerce for a while and worked downtown and have really enjoyed seeing the vitality being brought into the downtown area. And that's called redevelopment, folks. There's that bad word again, development, but that's what it is. When the community decides really on its own, with the help of funding from government agencies sometimes, to redevelop old neighborhoods. And I think that's also happening in Charleston, Callow area. There's redevelopment money coming in. The community effort is incredible. I'm envious because up here in East Bremerton, we don't have as much of an identity, you know, as folks down in the old historical districts. But I'm pushing for mid-century modern. I do think that redevelopment and affiliations with Main Street Association, once we become a Main Street Association, B&O taxes stay here. And
Thank
that'll be a
you.
huge influx. Thanks.
Jane.
Well, I actually worked for the city of Bremerton as their capital improvements inspector when we rebuilt Washington Avenue, put in the condos, the conference center. So I remember the day that we knocked down a building and there was 10,000 rats running on the streets. And now the downtown area is pretty nice. There's some expensive features to maintain, like the park. So I think Callow's kind of doing it better. Callow's just organically, the people who are investing in there are making the decisions how they want their community to look and work and act. And once we get transit to go down there, or an actual marked bike lane so people can easily get to Callow, I think that's going to help with rejuvenating that whole district.
Thank you. Marwan.
Can you please restate the question for me?
Yes, absolutely. Downtown Bremerton and other areas have come a long way in recent years. What ideas do you have to encourage continued vibrancy of Bremerton's neighborhoods?
I think I actually answered first.
Yeah.
Oh, you did? I'm sorry.
I was like, oh, what's the question? Did I miss the question?
I skipped over a question. That's not fair. I knew it was going to happen, and it was the last one. So everyone's answered. We're good, right? Okay. Thank you for your patience. All right. So that concludes our questions for this evening. It's now time for closing statements, and you each have 90 seconds. We'll begin with Mike Simpson. So you have 90 seconds for your closing statement.
Great. So tonight we've heard a lot of different things that have come through with other folks vying for positions to represent you, the people, on the city council. Your voice is the most important, and your voice on the council is what the city needs. Government isn't the answer to all our problems. Many of the times, government, it doesn't provide solutions. It actually causes the problems, and then it tries to rush in and put a Band-Aid on it. And we need to fix that. We need to have people on the council who provide the answer that most government entities don't want to hear. No. And that's the most important one when it comes to spending our money. When it comes to when our money's put on the table, there shouldn't be a free sign that says free stuff, come and get it now. We enable a lot of the bad behavior that happens in our city by giving out free stuff, and we should stop that immediately. We should be fiscally responsible with our dollars, and we should have a rubric at everything that goes on. And by that, I mean it's a simple quantitative statement saying, are we getting the results that we're looking for? And if we aren't, then we should say no, and we should stop paying for it. Thanks.
Thank you. Anna.
Thank you. I think council is there to represent the people who live here. That's why I hold monthly town halls ever since the emergency declaration was lifted. That's why I respond to my emails. That's why I knock on constituents' doors in the week or two before each town hall so that I can listen to them, so that I'm not giving people what I think they want, but instead that I'm giving them what they want. Will I be able to do everything? Absolutely not. Um, I am one of 7 counselors, and we haven't got infinite money here in Bremerton. But to do as much as we possibly can to make people who live here the primary drivers of what we decide to do with the money that we have. Before I was elected, I wanted to be the kind of elected representative that I seldom saw. And I hope that the people of Bremerton believe that, in fact, I've done my very best to be that, and that you reelect me. And with my remaining 10 seconds, I'm going to circle back to the comp plan, which I had planning present at, I think, my second town hall. So there you go.
Thank you. Denise.
Well, I want to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum. I've been a really proud League member for many years. My mother was also a League member. I moved to Kitsap 9 years ago when my grandson Liam was born, and I love it here. I especially love Bremerton, or B-Town, as I like to call it. I like our vibe here. I like the somewhat geeky, industrial, working class culture. I like the majestic beauty. I love the majestic beauty and the grit and determination of our residents. As CEO of YWCA Kitsap County, I led a team of 30 serving victims of domestic violence with access to housing. I'm well aware of the lack of housing and services. That's why I'm a strong advocate. I came out of retirement to become the CEO of the chamber. So I know well the struggles of small local businesses, and I'll continue to be a champion for the chamber and other efforts for economic vitality in the region. And I was appointed to the council. This is my first election. Since then, the council's been faced with a lot of difficult decisions. I believe I've been an important voice on the council. I've brought over 40 years of nonprofit management and executive experience. We have more work to do, and I hope to be on the dais with my council colleagues in January to move us to a better future for Bremerton.
Thank you. Janine.
Well, I really want us to continue to make Bremerton to be the place that celebrates their children, their elderly, their arts community, which there's a big underground art community here. There's a little bit above ground. It's a great place. It's beautiful. We have so much potential, and I don't mean like potential to be a big city, but to be more of a inclusive city, which sometimes it doesn't always feel that way to everybody. So if I'm elected, which I hope I am, I want to work to make our city a better place for everybody. And my timer's broken, so I have no idea where I'm at. So I'm going to close with that. Thank you.
You have 30 more seconds if you'd like to keep going.
Well, and one of my really big things is to try to get our transportation dollars to work more for the people who live in the city instead of the emphasis that we have to make things easier for people to commute in and out of our city. So that's one of my main goals. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Marlon.
First, I want to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this. I want to thank all the panelists that are on here today. And of course, most of all, the people that are watching and those that will vote. I see myself as a public servant. I'm not telling you what I'll do if elected. I'm telling you the things now that I will continue to do should you elect me. and I am asking for your vote. Last year, I spearheaded the 10 grand for porta potties for the unhoused down on ML King. Uh, when that didn't go through, me and several other people got together and got the porta potties down there on ML King. And what we did is we're looking at both sides, right? You have the Marvin Williams Center, you have renters, you have owners that are being impacted by the unhoused, um, using the bathroom in public. And then you also have the most private thing that someone does multiple times a day who needs to have the dignity to be able to do that. And so we were able to get the porta potties down and serve both interests on that side. The big issues that I see in this community are affordable housing, homelessness, transportation, healthcare, and education. As I said, I see this as a symbiotic thing, and this is we need advocacy, we need support, and that is what I do from the conduit, is to bring more people to the table and have a democracy for all the Bremerton citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you, candidates. Voters, hopefully this forum has helped you choose a candidate. Ballots for the November 7th general election will be mailed out soon if you don't already have it, and the League is encouraging voters to return their ballots early. The League's forums are recorded, and links to the videos will soon be available on our website at lwv-kitsap.org, which is right there on my background. It'll also be on the Kitsap League's YouTube channel. Additionally, Bremerton Kitsap Access Television may broadcast on Comcast Channel 12 and Wave Broadband Channel 3, so check BCAT's listings for their upcoming schedule. Also, please encourage others to view the forums and to vote. My thanks to our candidates for participating in our forum this evening, and thank you to each of our audience members for listening, and to the public and the League for providing thoughtful questions. Please have a safe and pleasant evening, and good night.
Hooray for the
Good
League.
night.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Recording stop.
All right, y'all. So let's get into the after party, if you will, of the League of Women Voters. Thank you, everyone who has tuned in to that forum or debate, if you will. Very interesting. As many of you know, or maybe you don't know, I did not finish high school. I got my GED 2 days after my 16th birthday. Didn't go back to college outside of my bricklayer certification until I was 24, going to Olympic College and earning my associate degree, and then moving on to Old Dominion University for my bachelor's and my master's in business management and education, respectively. So, no debate club. This is the first conversation like this that we're having this conversation. So it was really interesting and fascinating to watch other people have these conversations. I will tell you, I'm not a big fan of it, right? Uh, to me, I think this is indicative of a broken system. For those of you that attended the campaign party, and for those of you that watched it, I posted that on Facebook last week, I believe. One of the things that my campaign manager was saying is that I'm not like any other candidate that she has served, right, or worked for, in that I really reject the way that politics is run currently, right? And so you can have a maverick, or you can have someone who sees things differently. And unfortunately, what we do is we say, okay, we love those ideas. Let's elevate this person and get them to run. But then we force them back into the same cookie cutter wedge of the way that things go, right? And so, yes, we don't have all night, unfortunately. So this would be 5 hours, depending on how much time you gave. And they actually cut out many of the questions because of time. However, if you give someone 60 seconds to answer a question, right, it becomes, well, who answered it the best off the cuff? Did they give a full response? And so I don't think that really serves anybody. Ultimately, we need more, right? We need more dialogue, more conversation. So one of the reasons why in the very beginning, I was asking my campaign manager, could I have my opponent on the conduit with me? So we could just talk, just have a conversation, right? because ultimately one of us are going to get elected, right? And hopefully, whoever that person is not only going to represent the constituents of which they've been elected for, right? We're both in the same district, but also will be able to take the things that were shared with the other candidate and pull those things forward as well, right? We have different people that have endorsed us. We have different special interests that are important to us. And so there's going to be some overlap on some things, housing, homelessness, right? But then we're going to have some divergence, like, the bicycle club, for instance, or transportation, accessibility for our uh, for wheelchair users. Okay, electrification concerns and issues, and how is that going to be affordable, right? So those things will be missed, and in 60 seconds, there's just not enough time to have a full-throated conversation in that. Also, sadly, um, looking at the League of Women's Voters website or their YouTube page, I was looking at the commissioners' debate or forum last year with Katie Walters and Laomi. Shout out to Laomi. I should give her the horn, but my horn is acting up right now. And in that, I think they had maybe 75 views, right? And this was on the YouTube. I don't know how many views they had on BCAT, but again, I see that as one of the huge issues that we have, right? If this is a democracy, that means that we need to have more people that are going to participate in that. This is something I was saying during the forum, right? And so we must find ways to invest in hearing from the constituents, hearing from the residents of Kitsap County. And there really wasn't a question of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I was a little disappointed in that. But if we, that is clearly important, right? That was a huge topic that was on the table before the homeless ordinance, right? And if we're going to have diversity, equity, and inclusion, whether it be from race or accessibility, as I said, with wheelchair usage, accessibility as to, well, who does Kitsap Transit serve, right? What are these programs designed? You have a take home bus for, shipyard workers, right? This is the largest employer in the county, which is all well and good, but these are also some of the most well paid folks in the county as well. And so for people that live in Bremerton but maybe work at Applebee's or somewhere in Silverdale, how do they get home when their shift is over? Right? That means it's a cab or an Uber or it's a friend if they have such a thing. And so we have to be cognizant of that. As Sunday transportation comes back, and it's something that I've advocated for a while, right now, it's a very limited service, and folks are gonna be able to dial a ride to get a ride to the one bus route that is coming back on Sunday, right? Is it a start? Sure. Do you need to start somewhere? Absolutely. Was enough outreach done to ensure that the people that most needed that service were reached? I don't believe so, right? And again, running a transportation company wasn't part of those conversations. Again, as far as the comp plan is concerned, having conversation that we've been door knocking for the last few months, right? And talking with a lot of our constituents. Most of them have no idea. They have no idea, right? So there's a hole, there's a gap in that. I also shared during our forum, there's a lot of apathy, right? There's a lot of people that believe that city government, city council, the mayor, it does not work for their best interests. And you can see that it's very emblematic when you're looking at what's happening on ML King and on Broadway, right? We have one side, again, Marvel Williams Center, shout out to them, renters, homeowners, other business owners that feel like the city has just left them high and dry to deal with the unhoused situation there, to hurt their business, to hurt their property values, to feel unsafe. And then on the other side, people are feeling, hey, you know what? These are Bremertonians. These are people. These are humans. What are you doing? We need to take care of our people. People are suffering. How do we walk past these people? So we have both of these dichotomies of thought. And so both sides feel like, you know what? Government's not working for us. Government only works for a selective few. But we're all saying the same thing. And so, as I was also saying in the forum, when it came to the question on the court and for the police officers, communication, transparency, dialogue, intellectual honesty, that's what's missing. See, we can't have conversations with each other. As I was saying in the 60 seconds that I had, you want to be heard so bad because you haven't been heard that you've got to get your point across, and you can't hear the other person's point, and you can't concede to agree with anything that they say for fear that you're going to give ground to them, and for fear that they're not going to, on the other hand, give it back to you when you say something that they agree with. For many people, they believe that Mike Simpson is a MAGA gentleman, right? And is far right. But if you notice, he was able to say, I agree with Marwan on several occasions. Clearly, I'm not MAGA. That's hard for people to do. That is what's going to make the difference. Yes, we are little old Bremerton. Yes, we're little old District 4. We're Olympic College. We're Bremerton High School, right? We're the Graveyard. We're Mount Zion. We're Our Lady Star of the Sea. We're Noah's Ark. We're all these, Kiwanis Park. We're all these little things down to the shipyard. But geopolitically, we see the civil unrest that's going on in the continent of Africa. We see what's going on in Ukraine and Russia. We see what's going on in Israel. We see what's going on in America. We see our unhoused. We see our folks that have mental health problems. We see our folks, our brothers and sisters that are struggling with addiction. We see our people that are fighting mental health, addiction, and homelessness all together. We see 8,000 people per day coming in through the southern border. We have civil unrest globally. And it's why I was saying in the forum that we have to do something radical. We can't keep making these incremental steps. We can't be fearful of saying, well, I don't want to be the one to do that because I won't get elected or I won't be reelected. Someone has to put these ideas forward. As you heard, the theme of the night for me was symbiotic. And what is symbiotic? We have folks that can't afford to live, which means they need jobs that pay. But even if we were to give everyone $30, $40 an hour, their children would not be able to maintain. The kids at Bremerton High School and Arm Jar and everywhere else. That's why it has to be radical. We have to turn the ship around. When we think about the electrification of vehicles, we can't allow for companies to come in from the outside and suck revenue outside of the city. We need to support the local businesses that are going to have the power stations to charge vehicles and keep that money circulating within our city, within our county. We need to train our residents, our youth, our middle-aged folks. It's not enough. We can't subsidize ourselves as we continue to inflate, right? Unfortunately, Denise Frey, brought up Bremerton Housing Authority, and I sat on the board of Bremerton Housing Authority, and it's a great agency, and they are doing some fantastic things. I think they're also award-winning. Shout out to them. And to no fault of Bremerton Housing Authorities, folks are on a waiting list for Section 8 for years. Does not work. And for all the unhoused that you see, for all the unhoused that are in their cars, for all the unhoused that are behind the fence at the Quality Inn, for all the unhoused that are in the woods, for all the unhoused that are couch surfing on a friend or a family's couch, or in a spare bedroom, or in a garage, or in a mobile home, or in an RV in the driveway. Those folks are continuing to fall lower and lower and lower. And what Mike Simpson recommended isn't going to work. So basically, if you can afford to live here, you can live here. Otherwise, you don't need to be here. You don't need to come to Bremerton. You don't need to come to Kitsap unless you can afford to live here. See, the problem with that thinking is most of the people that are already living here can't afford to live here. So are they supposed to leave? Are they supposed to move? Where are they supposed to go? That's why it needs to be radical. That's why we need to do our own building. That's why we need to do our own training. We need to be able to solve our issues on this peninsula with our unique situation, with a huge metropolitan city 30 minutes away or an hour by ferry, with the shipyard, biggest employer, situated on a peninsula. We can look and see what high impact practices exist in other cities and other states. But we need to look to ourselves. We need to look within. Where are the solutions? That's where I believe the answer lies. And while I don't think there's anything wrong with looking around and seeing what other people have done, we see no one has solved homelessness. Many people agree with the housing first model. So how do we build on that? When I spoke about the individuals from Rock the Block and folks coming together to do more of what they already do, to get some exponential synergy from coming together and saying, hey, we're going to take the trip. I'm going to feed you. I'm going to dress your wound. I'm going to have a conversation. I'm going to love on you. I'm going to take you to treatment. I'm going to advocate for you when you get out of treatment. Make sure that you have housing. Make sure that you're set up in outpatient treatment. I'm going to make sure that you have a place to live, like an Oxford home. Or one of the many other places. I won't necessarily call out one. There's too many, so I won't name any more because I'll leave people out. I want to make sure that you are supported as you get yourself to stability. And those things take time. Sometimes they take months, years. But we get folks off the block. Many agencies wash their hands. We get folks off the block. We get them a little stable, and we're good. But they're out here what? At McDonald's, making $18 an hour? You tell them you want them to go to school. But when you don't realize the ramifications or the issues. I just had a gentleman in my home until 10 o'clock last night doing community service because he had these hours he needed to get in before the deadline. Now, yes, there was some procrastination on his part. But at the same time, his current employer is telling him, you know what? It's becoming a problem. You having to go and do a random UA. You having to go to court. You having to go to outpatient. And he actually had the privilege of driving the company vehicle. Well, he no longer has that privilege to do that. Now he's going to school. He's going to work. He's doing the random UAs. He's participating in drug court. He's doing all the things. But it's exceedingly difficult when there is no support system to navigate it. And what we say is, well, you need to pull yourself up from your bootstraps. If you want it bad enough, you'll find a way to do it. And that's all well and good. But the problem is the rate. I don't know if recidivism is right. But the failure rate is going to increase the harder you make it. And there's no extra credit because, man, as difficult as it was, man, that 5% made it. There's no extra credit for that. The point is to get people stable, to get people housed. Many of these folks have families. Many of these folks have school-aged children. We want them to reconnect with their children, to restore the family unit. But we're telling them, nah, we're going to make it harder and harder and harder. And like many things, many of us have a surface sympathy until it's one of us or one that we love. Prostate cancer might not have as much meaning unless it hits your family. Breast cancer might not have that effect unless it's someone in your family. Someone who is addicted to fentanyl or meth might not have that same effect unless it happens to your family, or you're a victim of a crime from someone who is suffering from addiction. And so once it touches you, then that thing becomes important. The problem is that many of the folks that can create and influence and make change are so far insulated from it really touching them that by the time it touches them, it's an epidemic. It's a huge issue. It's a huge problem. It's going to cost money. It's going to cost infrastructure. We are already spending money. We are already allocating resources. We're going to have to allocate more. Levies are failing, as we spoke about in the forum. At some point, we're going to have to rip the Band-Aid off. We have out of control debt. What are we going to do? The debt clock is just spinning and spinning and spinning and spinning. Which administration is going to say, I'm going to make the hard decision, knowing that I'm not going to get another term, knowing that it might hurt the party for maybe a term or two, maybe for a generation? We hurt now a little bit, or we hurt a whole lot in the future. That's what we're up against. I was told to keep a very kind of light, don't get too deep, which you can't really get too deep in 60 seconds, right? You can't. But it's hard to keep it light when the issues are so dire. And I'm not saying that we have to go through life and just say, oh, things are so bad, so we have to be doom and gloom. We can't be happy. We can't celebrate. We need to do both. And one of the biggest ways we can do that is getting the involvement of those that are apathetic, those who believe that this system doesn't work for me. These people don't care about me. I'm just out here suffering. And everything that is said and done, it sounds good. It's patronizing. It's performative. And I don't see the change. I just know that my dollar goes less. I just know that people are advocating for things that don't impact my life in regards to, do I have to make decisions on what I'm going to buy? Do I pay the entire light bill? Do I have to tell my baby, sorry, you can't play that sport or participate in that after school activity because mama and daddy just don't have the funds to do so? Bike lanes, are they important? Sure. Are they the most important thing? No, not by far. We have to do it together. We have to find common ground. We cannot wait. The rest of the country is actually counting on somebody, hopefully us, to be that beacon, to show the rest of the way whether it comes out of leadership from District 4 to the city of Bremerton to the county and stretches into Mason County and Pierce and King, goes from Washington to Oregon to California and on east. Why not you? Why not us? It has to be us. These things are going to touch us. There was a time when fentanyl wasn't here. There was a time when meth wasn't here. I was speaking to someone who unfortunately was experiencing homelessness, and they said, hey, the trank is here. And for those of you that don't know, that is horse tranquilizer, if I'm not mistaken, mixed with fentanyl. And if you Google Kensington Avenue in Philadelphia, you can see some pretty horrific images of people that are on this drug. And if you think fentanyl is bad, and if you think meth is bad, or prescription opiates, or whatever have you, wait till you start seeing that more and more. And while there is a lot of mental health, there is a lot of addiction. But you have very successful people who are coping, who are self-medicating through wine, through marijuana, through legal drugs, through illegal drugs, functional alcoholics, functional drug users that are able to go to work and able to maintain. There's a reason why we have so many DUIs every year, right? These aren't homeless people. These are people that have jobs, that are functioning, many who are high level. The addiction is already there. Just many people are able to go to work and sustain. So they don't get the same consternation as those on the street. There are those that are coping with pain, with stress, with anxiety. They're trying to hang on. They're trying to survive. They're doing everything they believe that they can do. And they're continuing to slip and slip and slip. There are those that are wiped out by a health issue, a health issue, a fire, an act of God. And they lose their situation. And over time, because it's so hard to climb out, they begin using drugs or alcohol to cope, to get through the night. It's 53 degrees outside. It's pretty chilly. Time to take the air conditioning out the window. Might be time to turn on the heat for some people. Might be time for that extra blanket. It might be time for the pajamas. Might be time for the jacket if you go out tonight. How do I get through the night? What do I do the next day? How do I get the shower? How do I get the job skills to get another job that's going to pay enough? Oh, well, I lost my job. I couldn't keep paying my rent. It got to the point where I got evicted. My credit's bad. My rental history is bad. I don't have a long job history. The job I have doesn't make 3 times the rent. So what am I supposed to do? Do the people care? Only in that I'm in their way and I'm affecting their business. I'm affecting their property values. They're struggling to hang on, so they don't really have the time or the bandwidth to care about what I'm going through. And slowly, more and more people fall. 5 years ago, ML King, Broadway didn't look like that. There's crabs in a pot or a frog in a pot. You slowly bring it to boil. They will die. They won't hop out. But if you throw them in a boiling pot, they'll hop out. We don't see it. The point in time count just increases every year. More people are pushed to the peripheral. We see it now. Mental health is increasing. Our youth, homelessness is getting younger, not older. Folks are seeing that there's no pathway, there's no hope. And unfortunately, we can say, right, if you just work hard enough, the problem is the seats get fewer and fewer as you ascend. So meritocracy is a pyramid. And while everyone can work as hard as they want, everyone's not going to get a seat when the music stops. All right. It's been 2 hours, y'all. That was my after conversation. I will be at, I believe that's the Chamber of Commerce. I don't want to say it wrong. They're having their eggs and conversation Tuesday at the Cloverleaf. So that's the next time I'll be able to have a conversation with other candidates and my opponent, Jane Rubalowski. Shout out to her. So I don't know if that's going to be broadcast or not. I think I had my assistant send an email to see if we can bring cameras. If that is the case, then I will record that event and I will post it and make that available. So, as always, take care of yourself, take care of each other. I am Marwan Cameron. This is The Conduit. This is me running for District 4 to be your elected city council person. Please spread the word. Early ballots come out, I believe, in 8 days. So your early voting should come out in the mail. Mark Marwan Cameron, you see the purple, right? We're always on brand. And then on November 7th is the election. Again, elect Marwan Cameron for City Council District 4. Thank you, everyone. Good night.